Hello and welcome back to Redirecting. I am going to be sharing a very disturbing yet interesting story with you all. Not that I'm going to be reporting it as news, but I want to provide yet another solution because I believe at this point we should be solution-based, in which over the years myself and many others have spoken about solutions, and many times it falls on deaf ears. Sometimes you have those who will take heed. And so our messages are not necessarily for those who feel like, well, that doesn't apply to me or what have you, but for those who are on the fence about making decisions about certain things and just kind of need some encouragement or a little nudge to go ahead and take the plunge in the right direction. Okay. Well, anyway, the story I'm going to be sharing is about the little 6-year-old girl who was arrested for throwing a tantrum, and they said that she hit another student or what have you. And what I feel about that, I'm going to share my feelings on that, and then I'm going to say what I believe the solutions are. But first, I want to roll the news clip on this so that you can be up to date on the details of the story, and I will be right back.
Investigators say the 6-year-old and an 8-year-old were both taken into custody yesterday on unrelated charges. Now, Orlando police are launching an internal investigation into this case. News 6's Nikki Zizaza joins us live from their headquarters tonight. And Nikki, you spoke with the grandmother of this 6-year-old, and she is pretty upset.
Yes, she is, Ginger. This concerned grandmother is not happy with the way Orlando Police School resource officer handled her granddaughter's tantrum by arresting her. The department's policy states that in order to arrest a child under the age of 12, you must have a watch commander's approval. And police tell us that did not happen in this case.
I turn on my TV with this remote.
Kaya Roll is like most little girls. She loves pink and has a cheery outlook on life.
Come sit down.
But after what her grandmother says happened on Thursday, the bubbly 6-year-old has little room to focus on school after she got a call from a school resource officer saying Kaya was arrested.
They say, what do you mean she was arrested? Say there was an incident and she kicked somebody and she's being charged and she's on her way.
Marilyn Kirkland says her granddaughter's journey to the Juvenile Detention Center by Orlando police officers began at Lucius and Emma Dixon Academy Charter School.
She's arrested and she has a charge. She's charged with battery.
The disorienting chaos, too much for Kirkland to process.
She has a medical condition that we're working on getting resolved. So he says, what medical condition? So I said, she has a sleep disorder, sleep apnea. He says, well, I have sleep apnea and I don't behave like that.
The first grader handcuffed and carted off, where the grandmother says she was fingerprinted and even had a mugshot taken.
No 6-year-old child should be able to tell somebody that they had handcuffs on them and they were riding in the back of a police car and taken to a juvenile detention center to be fingerprinted, mugshot.
Kaya equally as upset.
Don't cry.
No, I'm good.
But happy to be home.
I felt sad that my grandma was sad. And I really missed her.
Orlando police confirmed there will be an internal investigation regarding this incident. As for the school, they have not commented. Kirkland also says that Kaya is supposed to report to court on October 16th, and if she does not, a warrant will be issued for the 6-year-old's arrest. For now, I'm live in Orlando, Nikki Zizaza, getting results, News 6.
So as you see, this thing has gotten very deep. They've said that she has a court date. If she doesn't show up, she will be arrested, or they will issue a warrant for her arrest. She was just basically treated like an adult in the whole process. And there was even the moment where the officer said that, he has a sleep disorder as well, and he doesn't act out like that. So you have this grown man comparing himself to a 6-year-old child. Go figure. There is no surprise nor shock about any of this anymore, okay? But we as a people, we need to observe things and process things a little differently than others, okay? We try to fit into a system that has already told us how they're going to be towards us. And I'm saying to myself, how many times do they have to tell us? How many times do they have to show us? How much more do we need to see? How many news events do we need to see and record and talk about before we finally get it? Okay. Now, we also recently heard of another case down in Florida as well. Both of these cases took place in Florida, I believe, where there was a young black student who was at a school just about a month, right around a month, and he was beat by 3 white students. Everything was handled quite differently. And what I mean by that, even though one student has been charged with a misdemeanor, the others were dealt with by the school system, and it was basically a code of conduct issue, right? Initially, the school wasn't trying to do anything. It wasn't until the mother made an issue of it. But in the case of the little 6-year-old, we're talking about a much younger child, much younger children, a much lighter incident. The school made it their business to make her the example, okay? But in the case where the white students were pummeling and beating and doing all these things to the black student, oh, it wasn't a big deal to them, not at all. But are any of us surprised at this point? Okay, so now you may ask, well, what is your solution to all of this? Well, it's the same solution that I've been talking about for many, many years, okay? And that solution is to educate your own at home. Okay. A lot of you say, well, what if you can't do that? What if you can't afford to? And I'm always kind of stumped when I hear someone say they can't afford to educate their own at home. But anyway, let me just, back up a little bit. There was a statement that Malcolm X made, and I've quoted it many times on this channel and our ministry channel. And that statement was, only a fool would send their children to their enemies to be taught. That statement is so powerful because it really lets you see exactly what's happening. That is what we are doing. Now, there have already been precedents set, and it's been made very clear that they don't want us in their environment. They don't want our children around theirs. This is why they were so angry when they started busing children, black children, into their communities to go to their schools. They were angry. I mean, fighting angry, you see. And so now that things have calmed down a bit, just a bit, because in these cases you see that there is still some hitting and kicking and pummeling and punching, you see, bullying. But now that things seem to have calmed down a bit, our people are just so comfortable. They don't want to seek any other alternatives. They're thinking, oh, these are the best schools. No, the best school is at home. The Bible tells us to train up our children in the way that they should go, you see. And most of us, we've gotten so engulfed in Western culture and society that we believe that the best is going to come through their system. Now, even when you have reports like 2020 where John Stossel did, I believe, 2 segments that I know of where he called it Stupid in America. And he did a whole expose on how America is not educating its people or its population properly. And they said that the dumbest student in some other countries is actually smarter than the smartest student here in the U.S. In other words, they're trying to say that our population of people is getting dumber and dumber. And yet our people, so-called black people, still like to hang their head on the educational system that is here in the U.S. that have told us time and time again that they are not interested in educating our children. And we will make excuse after excuse after excuse as to why we can't do any better or any different. Now, real quickly, I want to share a story that I've shared before concerning my son, Elia. Okay, well, not just him, but I'm talking about him because of the bullying issue, okay? When we lived in Michigan, our son, Elia, had an incident at school. He was 6 years old at the time, where a white student took a pencil and stabbed him in the middle of his hand. Now, when he came home, that was the first thing he showed us. Now, it wasn't just a little puncture. It wasn't a small wound. It was a hole in the middle of his hand. And of course, I was mad as hell. I was so angry and upset when we called the school. They said that they didn't know it happened. And our son, first thing he said when he got home, eyes were still poofy. The first thing he told us was that he told the teacher and she told him to go sit down at his desk and put his head down. And so his story doesn't match hers. The teacher claims not to have known anything about this big hole in a little 6-year-old's hand. Okay? But the student, which was our son, tells us, well, I did tell her. And she told me to go sit down, put my head down. And so the next day, an incident happened with the same young man where our son defended himself. It was either a day or two later, something like that. It's been so long because he's 20, Elias 23 now. He's an adult now. So this happened a long time ago. So whether it was a day or two later, the incident kind of caused him to say, okay, so this is how you do things, huh? You can injure another student and nothing's going to be done about it, right? And so when he had a confrontation with the same student again, this time he defended himself. And at that time, we got a phone call. Oh, your son did this to another student. And at that point, I reminded her. I said, well, our son was injured and we didn't get a phone call. As a matter of fact, he still has a big hole in the middle of his hand and absolutely nothing was done about it. I said, I don't condone fighting, but if my son is defending himself, what do you want me to do if you're not going to do anything to protect him from other students who think that their skin color gives them a right to hurt my son? And so eventually, we ended up taking our son out of public school and we put him into a Christian school. Another big mistake. Back during these days, y'all, we were stupid. We were stupid parents because we took them to a white Christian school. Okay, a white Christian school, as if that was going to be any different. It's like the minute we walked in there, of course, they took our money. They knew that they couldn't, discriminate. Okay, so of course they took our money. Sure, your son can come here. We didn't get any smiles, any hellos, anything, but we were so stupid we still stuck them in there. You see, this was back in our love everybody days. Like I said, that was a long time ago. Eli was very young then. But we were back in our stupid Christian love everybody days, which is long gone, way past, behind us now. But we put our son in that Christian school, and he was the only black student there. And there was one mixed student there who was pretty much white, if you know what I mean. He didn't have anything to do with our son. He was accepted and treated as one of the white students, and our son was the only piece of pepper in all of the salt. And so we had a couple of incidents happen there as well. One time he was pushed down on the playground. They had an asphalt playground, and while he was running, one of the students tripped him, and he rolled and tumbled and hurt his arm so bad that it looked messed up by the time we got there. Because someone decided, while he's running and playing, I'm going to trip him, make him fall on this hard pavement. Another incident was he was attempting to sit in his chair at his desk, and a white student yanked his chair out from under him before he could sit in it. And he hit his tailbone on the floor, the concrete floor, so hard that it injured him. And in that incident, the teacher did the same thing that the public school did, told him to sit down and put his head on the desk. In other words, we're not going to do a darn thing about it. And so I said all that to say this. Why do we continue to put our children in the hands of people who hate them? People who can't stand them. And then we make every excuse under the sun as to why we can't do anything different. It's gotten to the point where our dysfunction causes us to be blinded by the dysfunction. We're blinded by it. We don't understand that incidents such as that causes more dysfunction in our children. They are affected by these things. And when we don't try to make decisions that are going to improve their overall focus, they go downward. They spiral downward. And things get worse for them. They get to the point where they don't want to be in school. They despise going to school. When they get old enough, they drop out. Or while they're still there, they act out. They get into trouble. They're not learning. So what is the point? If they're in a hostile environment and they're not learning anyway, what are we doing? Again, we will come up with 1,000 excuses. Well, I can't afford to do this and I can't do that. I don't know how to educate my children. And see, that's a problem too. That is another problem. And this is not to put anyone down, but we've got to look at things for what they are. It is what it is, family. Why are we in situations to where we are not even seeking education ourselves to where we can properly take care of our children and teach them? There is so much to learn in this world. We don't have to just focus on the things that they want us to teach our children, such as American history. Although it's good to know things about American history, but it needs to be taught from those who are going to give them the truth, because American history will have you thinking, and this is what they teach in a lot of schools, that Christopher Columbus discovered America. So how the heck is that education if you're telling students that he is an American hero? And if you know the true story of Christopher Columbus, he was a low-down, dirty, rotten scoundrel. But they're being taught at school something else. So why are we putting them there in the first place? Why not teach them the true history about America? About how they enslaved, beat, maimed, hung, did all kinds of things. Now forget about their history. What about this? Why don't we teach our children how to survive? Why don't we teach them how to discover what is in nature? Knowing how to identify plants that are edible or poisonous, life-saving things. Why don't we teach them how to raise livestock, how to build structures, how to do plumbing, electrical, drywall, carpentry, gardening, horticulture, farming, business? There is just so much that we can teach our own children, but our focus is way out of proportion. We are refusing to redirect because we want to stay right where we are, which is in their educational system, thinking that they are getting the best education possible when you give them the best education at home. Your structure doesn't have to be so stringent to where they feel pressure. There was an incident many years ago, too, that we talked about as well, where there was a little black boy in a school where the teacher was bullying him, not the students, the teachers. And he was so afraid to face the teacher that he went home and hung himself because he didn't want to go back to school and face this treacherous person another day. And yet we sit back and we keep on making excuse after excuse as to why we can't do any better. We have to understand, we've been doing a family focus or a family life series. We've got to understand that decisions that we as adults make affect our children. And if you care about your children, you need to reevaluate how you are doing things and redirect your focus into the right direction. Because our children are going into environments where they can't learn, because you cannot focus when the person who is supposed to be teaching you hates you and is not looking out for your best interests. And so again, I feel like we are without excuse, but we can continue making all the excuses while everybody else is making progress. But we're going to end up right back at square one. So either we redirect or we simply shut up. Okay, family. With that, I will say shalom. Be sure to ring the bell to be notified of new uploads on this channel, and also comment, share, like, and subscribe.